Hey, hello, folks. Sam Julian, see you there. Thank you for the follow. So I know you're there at least. Today's going to be interesting and a lot of fun. We are going to have a discussion with Layla of Layla Codes It, another fantastic streamer and also a developer advocate for Twilio. Because I'm curious about that life. I have no idea how it works. So we're going to have that conversation. We'll bring her in just a second. Anybody who joins, if you're there now, feel free to ask questions along the way. We'll make sure we make Layla answer them, and we will go from there. So, without further rambling from me, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Layla, and hopefully we will see each other and can hear each other, and we'll start this conversation. So, Layla of Layla Codes It.
Hello.
We are live. Hello.
Hopefully people can hear me.
I hope so as well. So Sam, I know you're there. If you can confirm for us whether you can actually see us, that would be lovely. I'm going to check my browser just in case. Briefly.
I can see us, but I've got us muted, so I don't know if people can hear us. Gotcha. Hey, Sam, how are you?
Okay,
oh, good. All is good.
Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, you're a developer advocate, and I want to know what that means. So for anybody who's joining us who doesn't know who you are, why don't we start with you just introduce yourself, tell us how you got started in this, or how you came to be a programmer, and we'll kind of go from there.
Oh, this could be a long story, Thursday. I have been in developer relations for more than 2.5 years now, and I was a full stack C# developer prior to that, and I changed career in late 2015, early 2016 to development. And before that, I ran my own business, and I sort of taught myself code, and that's kind of how I got into stuff. And then, I just sort of was speaking at my local meetup, and my now boss approached me and asked me if I was interested in doing DevRel, and I was like, yeah, sure. So I did.
Awesome. And I see Jim in the chat. Hello, Jim. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, so you're not an old fart like me. I've been doing this since I was 11.
Well, I don't. Well, that doesn't make you an old fart. That just makes you been doing it a long time.
Fair enough. But it's very interesting, and it's actually a separate conversation, I think, about the different paths people are taking to find their way into software development these days, and the skills they develop along the way that might enable them to do things like developer relations, because you think of software developers typically as the hermit like me who sits in his hole and slings code and isn't particularly good at talking to people. But so I guess starting from there, and I'd like to talk about developer relations sort of as an industry or as a sub-industry in general, but then also I'd love to know more about what you do specifically at Twilio. So kind of however you want to approach that, where do you want to start?
Yeah. I guess
what is developer relations is a good question to start with.
So there's a couple of different things, and Sam Julian is in DevRel as well, so he can maybe pipe up as well. And so there's a few different things. You have advocacy. There's lots of aspects of DevRel. So let's start with the main aspects, which is advocacy, which is bringing ideas and feedback from the community and your users and your developers back into the company. So that's like a feedback loop. And then you have evangelists, which is there's a lot of crossover as well. So as an evangelist, my main priority is to evangelize our product. And so there's a slight difference in the focus. What it ends up is being that we all do advocacy and evangelism are more or less the same. There's a slight distinction which maybe suits like the FD or something, like, oh, this person is evangelizing, they're not all hugs and stickers and we're still advocates for the company and things like that. So it's kind of the differences with that. And then you have other aspects of DevRel, which is like docs writers. So people that work on the docs, they're still in DevRel. People who write content, so blog content, technical tutorials, they're all in developer relations. So developer relations is any sort of, I guess to use a technical term, it's the API between your company and the developers. It's that little bit that allows it all to talk. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I saw a very interesting quote. Where was it? It kind of wrapped up what I was expecting it to be. And I'll find it there. Yeah, to the community, you represent the company. To the company, you represent the community. You must have both their best interests in mind at all times. Yeah, that's interesting. I had not thought of those distinctions among sort of advocacy versus evangelism. I was picturing more just you're the person who gets on Twitch or YouTube and makes videos about how cool the APIs are with this company and helps connect developers and work with them. But yeah, I can see the distinction there. So yeah, that's very interesting.
So at Twilio, we have quite a large evangelism team, and recently, like 3 months ago, we started an advocacy team, and we have one developer advocate. So we actually have the two working now, and our developer advocate works in the docs team. So we have something called the Dev Network, which is our dev relations team, and we have the docs team in that. So they're called developer educators. We have the evangelism team. We have the voices team, which handles blog content and external contributors. We have the enterprise evangelism team, which works more like internally with companies, and that's kind of a new team. And we have the Twilio champions team. And so we've got all these basic teams that make up our DevRel unit, if that makes sense.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, it's big. And then we have our advocate is actually sitting inside the education team, because Dominic has more of a relationship with the engineers at Twilio, the people who make the SDKs and the helper libraries, and that sort of sits well with docs, because he's taking feedback from people out in the community and saying, we could do this better. And he goes and talks to them and liaises on how we can serve the community better. Whereas the evangelism team is very much about, we are the first people that a developer meets with Twilio. So we'll be at an event, and their first knowledge of Twilio is going to be through us. They'll have never heard of it. They'll meet us, and we'll tell them about Twilio. And then, like, we have the people who do the docs, and they help people use Twilio. And then we have people who set up the champions and voice programs, and that's all about us love Twilio. So we have this no use love, and that's like our pipeline, if you know what I mean. So the evangelism is right there at, have you ever heard of Twilio? Oh, you have. And as you go down, it's like, how could you use Twilio? What could you do better with it? What could we help you with? And it sort of moves its way down there.
That's incredible. I mean, I knew I had seen a number of Twilio streamers, obviously CLW and you, and and a few others. But wow, that's incredible. I had no idea that Twilio in particular has such an emphasis on that. It feels like developer relations is kind of a new side of the industry still, even. Is that a trend that you're seeing with other companies? I know Bald Bearded Builder is a DevRel with Vonage, I think.
Yes.
I haven't seen a whole lot of people that are either owning the title or I don't know a lot about it. Is that kind of the trend in the industry at this point, or is it still sort of insular to certain companies?
It ebbs and flows, I think. I will just answer Silicon Orchid's thing. The thing about avocados, or avocados, I'll just do that before it gets lost, is that someone misspelled it in Portuguese, which advocato, and someone misspelt it as avocado, and then that's where that came from, as avocado. So that's where it stems from.
And thank you for the follow, KJ Miller and Pecky Codes as well. I had seen the avocado here and there. I wasn't sure what obviously there's the close linguistic connection, but yeah, that's interesting.
It was a mistake in Portuguese.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's where that came from. And then one person was like, "Oh, I'm an avocado now, and so they keep doing that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think, well, the fourth employee at Twilio was a developer evangelist. So at Twilio, it's always been very predominant. Microsoft had evangelists for a very long time, for years and years, and then they transitioned. The evangelists were very much almost sales orientated, and then they transitioned to advocates, and they sort of had a big movement over, and now they've got the cloud developer advocates. So they had a very transitory movement through DevRel. A lot of companies start DevRel, so you'll see it when things are going well, they'll bring in a DevRel team, and as soon as things go bad, they're like, right, yep, axe the DevRel team. Yep. So you sort of see it fashionable, it dies, it's fashionable, it dies. So you'll see that kind of thing happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's one of the very first, not arguments against, but just problem areas to be aware of that I saw in a discussion about developer relations was, how do you attribute anything to or from a developer relations specialist? How do you know that this particular DevRel advocate or this advocate has brought in 5 more developers to the platform, or brought on another corporate entity because he talked to the developers who talked to their bosses who talked to their bosses? So that sort of KPI attribution is hard to, yeah, it's hard to quantify what a developer relations person does, I think, for the bottom line.
Definitely. It's a very nebulous thing. We have lots of tactics that we use to try and get our attributions in.
Okay.
And so we try, we have methods that try and get us attribution, so we can kind of see how we affect. There's no definitive way that we know, but we can sort of guesstimate that we had X amount of effect on something.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And I have to think that with COVID and the reduction in conferences and things like that, I have to think that's got to be a big source of where you guys do what you do. And how has that hurt things this year? I mean, I assume it's hurt things this year, but is there just a shift to more online streaming type of advocacy, or like how has that really changed how things work?
So it has changed quite a lot. Some teams have been completely disbanded. There's been a lot of disruption, and they have just completely axed their teams. I know that a lot of DevRel teams have been made redundant. So there has been things, but a lot of the teams have pivoted. So that's why you see a lot of us advocates on streams. I mean, I don't know what Sam Julian's been doing for in his pivot. Is he a lot of people have been doing more meetups, webinars, more blog content, virtual conferences. So, you know, we've had to pivot, and I decided I really wanted to do streaming, and I love it. And I get to build things, and I get to have fun and talk to people, and also share knowledge and encourage people to code. And I mean, I don't do that much Twilio stuff in my streams, and yep, things. You know, it's really quite. It's varied across our team. We had a choice of like really lean heavily into blog content, or lean heavily into video, or streaming and things like that. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Silicon Orchid said he's always quizzing you and colleagues about how you quantify what you do, used to the engineering sales where things are much more accountable. Yeah. I'm used to running Facebook ad campaigns or Google ad campaigns where I can split test 100 different creative ideas and measure exactly to the click and to the penny what has an effect where. And I can only imagine for an already cash-strapped software company how hard it would be to justify a team like that. But at the same time, you have to know that role is critical to actually helping your software companies survive.
It is marketing, and without marketing, exactly, nobody knows you're there. So you have to balance up the cost of a DevRel team or even just a few DevRel individuals against the revenue they're bringing in. And I think people see it as soon as they axe a DevRel team and they stop talking to their developers, they start dealing with just the finance people, and they lose the developer love, and it's the developers that bring people to the API or whatever it is. So.
Exactly. So, so hello, Monstrovska. And Sam Julian says, we've been doing a ton of remote events, small online meetups, streaming videos, also a big focus on strategy and programs like Auth0 ambassadors. Very cool. Yeah, I've seen a lot more from Auth0 lately. So good job. Probably working more hours post-COVID, honestly. Yeah, I can imagine. KJ Miller says Sam Julian's been crushing it with a book and a million other things. Yeah, there you go. So I wanted to ask specifically. So, obviously I've noticed you do your streaming, and I love hanging out on your streams. And I've seen you do things with Twilio. So is your streaming a part of you? Is that your day job at this point, or is it sort of additional to, and occasionally you do Twilio and charge them for it, or how?
It blurs a line. So It is part of my job, and I add my numbers. So like how many views I get or something. We put that in, and we look at that just to see, are we still, getting good views? Are people, progressing, growing, doing interesting things? So it's a part of my job, but I also do it outside of work hours. I stream on a Saturday. I'll stream in the evening. I've streamed games. I want to be a part of the community. Some people on my team do just stream for their job. You'll rarely see them streaming outside of hours. They'll stream on the Twilio channel, and it's very much part of their job. What I feel is that, my goodness, I get to do something I really love and sneak it into my work hours. How lucky am I? So that's kind of the difference for me. Whereas, a lot of people on my stream, my team are like, yep, I'll go and do my hour and a half stream. They're very regimented in their time. They'll have a guest. They'll talk to them. They have set questions. They have Chef Brent will usually be doing the production for them behind it. But it's like they deliver it. And whereas I'm like, well, I do all my own production. I have my own branding. It's very much my thing. And I'll occasionally drop some Twilio in there just to keep people happy.
Gotcha. There you go. So I'm going to shut down my business and quit my job and come work for Twilio, because that's amazing. Just everything I've learned at this point. No, it really, I can't overstate how remarkable it is that there's a company that understands and allows for that kind of freedom and expression and emphasis on interacting with the community that makes the company what it is. It's really incredible. Okay, so I'm going to quit fanboying over Twilio, but
it's not all like rainbows and stickers. Okay, there's a lot of stuff where I need to write content. So what I do use my stream for is to build. I've created workshop videos. So I use my stream. An excuse I use to stream is that, well, I'm going to create the workshop content on stream, get feedback from the community on how they want to see it happening. So that's how I built Cloud City Cake Company. I built that on stream.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then in the times when I'm not streaming, I was recording the video and building that, excuse me, documenting it, pitching it in the company. So, I worked with sales engineers on that to see what our customers want, where they lack knowledge. So I try to address it to all of that. So I know that we don't have the best documentation around our security APIs. So that's why I've been doing a lot of focus on security. And to get there, I needed to crack ASP.NET identity. And so many people need to crack that as well. And it took far longer than I expected, but it's okay. It's, really good at serving the community, because we're learning together, sharing knowledge, and people can ask questions. But at the same time, I would be writing this code anyway. Yep. So that's kind of how I look at it. I just the head of our team is like, just turn on the camera. Whatever you're doing, just turn on the camera. What have you got to lose? And that's kind of the attitude. So I generally go and, okay, well, I know I'd have to be figuring out how to integrate ASP.NET Identity into my code. So I may as well do it online and get some people to help me.
Gotcha. And so the Cloud City Cake Company was the one where it started with a chat bot, and then started the identity process, and then you finished it. It looked like a nightmare to me, but you were getting it. I mean, I watched you figuring it out, and that's I mean, as a complete aside, that's one of the really cool things I think about live coding is showing, and developer relations in general is just kind of showing the world, like, okay, stop putting these people, these senior developers or whoever it is on a pedestal. We all Google shit. We all struggle with things, and we all have to. That's what programming is figuring out problems. So yeah, that's what I love about doing this, about streaming and such in general. So yeah, Packy Codes said, thanks Sam Julian for the email. I assume about this stream and that you're always on Twitch. Hello Boozy. Let's see who else we got. Jim says that you've been putting in hours of your own time, most recently streaming to promoting and work on a project that relates to your voluntary role. Yes, voluntary role on the board of the .NET Foundation. That's an interesting transition. So I saw that. First of all, congratulations. I saw that you were elected to the board. Is there any aspect of this sort of developer relations mentality in what you do as part of the .NET Foundation, or is that something completely different?
I bring my knowledge of how to communicate and build community to the foundation. So one of the things I feel I can bring to the foundation is how to talk to junior developers, people who are new, how to try and encourage developers in. So in our first meeting, we're like, how are we going to communicate things? Oh, well, we'll use GitHub Conversations. And I was like, no, wait a minute. GitHub Conversations looks far too much like you're doing a PR or something on Stack Overflow. This isn't a welcoming, encouraging, safe place for a new developer to come and chat and find out a little bit more and maybe ask for help. And I'm like, we need to change that. And they're like, oh, yeah, they hadn't thought of that, because a lot of the board, super experienced developers, really awesome people who really care, but sometimes you don't know, you can't see it unless someone points it out to you. And I'm like, I've been there. I know that these places aren't welcoming. So we need to make a community. So that's what I can bring from my knowledge of DevRel is, like, how do we build community? How do we make places that people want to be in and help build and moderate and mentor and things like that? So I definitely think my stuff from DevRel comes into that.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's the ivory tower idea. I've focused at the whatever level you want to call it. I focused on what I've done for so long that I forget how challenging some of this stuff can be as a brand new developer, even as a junior developer with a few years. I mean, even like you said, even Git and GitHub itself. First of all, what's the difference? What's the etiquette on GitHub? I just had a conversation about that the other day, and this is things that I've taken for granted for 10 years. It's just like I can definitely see both from the developer relations side itself and like you're saying, just the experience there that you can bring to something like the .NET Foundation, which is obviously going to be made up of people with a little more experience, who are a little more out of touch with the younger, not younger, but more just getting started crowd in development.
Junior, let's say, because they can be any age, just moving, transitioning like I did after many careers, and I transitioned over to development well into my career, and I was still junior. I was right in there with a 21-year-old grad student in my first job, and I'm like, you can't be ageist about this. And I think this is where we need communities where, I've worked with older adults and taught them coding. Why shouldn't, if they're interested, I'm happy to teach them,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen lots of stories along those lines lately. Then you have the opposite problem when well, I think as Grumpy Game Dev would put it, dinosaur yourself is a whole other challenge in the industry where you just kind of get stuck in what you're doing, and then suddenly it's 20 years later and that's not relevant anymore. And my father ended up facing that after he was made redundant at a certain position. It was very, very difficult for him to find anything because it is so hard to continue to stay up and current with all of the technology that we use on a day-to-day basis. And that's, to me, where I think the developer relations role and live coding in general and things like that are so useful. It is keeping people engaged and moving with the technology. But anyway, yeah. So let's see. KJ Miller says, we're getting a little pushback on the streaming side as your marketing and legal want oversight. I can definitely see that being a problem. We had to establish really early on, this is Sam Julian, that Twitch was an experimental, informal area and not subject to that. Yep. I'd be really curious to hear how Twilio dealt with this as well. So yeah, but what does Twilio give you, sort of parameters or do's and don'ts, things like that?
We have put in that streaming is experimental, much like OAuth has, really, I guess. And we don't know what the figures are out of it. We don't know if it's successful. We can just see that it's where developers are, and that's where they're congregating. And one of our things at Twilio is that we go where developers congregate, because that's where our community is. And there's a huge amount of number of developers congregating on Twitch. So, we should be there. And likewise with, I can see that Jay's saying, how the different aspects, how do you present that? Well, I don't really go on the Twilio channel that much because I can let F-bombs slip out a little bit. And I stream for
Perfectly fine here, by the way.
I'll stream for hours and hours and hours. And if I'm stuck in something, it's like I'll do 5 hours. So what we tend to do on the Twilio channel, and earlier on, I started on the Twilio channel. Like Sam came on the Twilio channel, and it was really, yeah, Sam's right. It's so much pressure when you're on the official channel. And I was like, God. I needed to make sure I moved my conversation on. And I was having a conversation. I remember I was on with Rachel Appel. And if you've ever seen Rachel and had a conversation with her or seen her on a show, she is hilarious. She's got a great sense of humor. And we went a little bit into, should we say, toilet humor a little bit. And I could see that the head of my team was in the chat, and he's like, maybe we should move it on from diarrhea. And I was like,
yeah, I can definitely see there being a little more pressure on the official channels.
So I was just like, I'm much happier being me on my own channel.
Yep.
Where if I'm a very sort of open book on it. If I don't know how to do things, I won't bluster through. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I'm stuck. Whereas I think the pressure on those channels is like, I know everything. I'm awesome.
Exactly. That's kind of, I can see that. Yeah. The pressure to try to be the expert. I'm still struggling with that even on my own channel. I get so flustered when I hit somewhere where I don't understand the problem, where it's a real problem. It's not just a typo. It's an actual logic bug that I'm trying to figure out, or syntax that I don't know. And I get tremendously flustered. I think we probably tend to be a little more perfectionist in this industry, and live streaming kind of exposes it all, which I think is, again, good in its own right. And yeah, I can see there being a lot more pressure not to fall into that, or to succumb to that on an official channel. Jim says the industry is still catching up. Yeah, years of indoctrination that conferences are how you reach developers. Yep, slowly being replaced with social and video media. Still a cast audience that still doesn't know that live coding. Oh yeah, that still doesn't know that live coding is even a thing. I didn't know. Vast. That makes more sense. I was trying to figure out the word you meant there, but yeah, that's it. Yeah, I wasn't even aware that it was a thing until maybe well, 4 months ago, and then I started streaming 3 months ago. I had no idea. I mean, of course, everybody knows there's videos on YouTube. That's how half of us learned how to code. But yeah, the live coding thing is a new frontier, and a really, really awesome one. Okay, so one aspect I wonder about is, I mean, you're, I assume, actually technically employed by Twilio.
Yes.
And I have seen that there is at least some place for developer relations as a consulting type of gig, or a freelancing type of gig. Does Twilio work with freelancers, or have you worked with or talked with freelance developer relations people?
So I know that there is a consultancy firm I've heard of that do freelance DevRel. And I know there's some freelance DevRel people that come in as contractors. I think to be successful, you need to be invested in the product and the company, because otherwise people see that you're a consultant, you're there for money, you're hired in to love the product. And I think if you're employed, I think Twilio products are really cool. I think communications is really interesting. This is my second job in the communications field. So I like communications. And I think you have to, there's always going to be a contract, and there's people who take a contract with the hope that it will go permanent. So that's slightly different. Sure. There are people who are like, yeah, I'm going to take a 3-month contract, rake in the dollars, and off they go. And I think developers see through that. They see that that person is towing the company line. They're speaking what the company marketing spiel is, but it's not coming from here. It's not like, this is actually this person using it. When I use Twilio, if it goes wrong, I tried to do a quick start and I was like, oh, this is a pile of garbage. We won't continue with this. I will need to sort out why this quick start is so unusable. And we were like, okay, so stick a pin in that. And that's my own company. And I represent what developers then feel. This is how our developers feel. They come in, and I think it makes people feel, if they see me struggle, that, oh, it's okay that coding is hard.
Yep, definitely. That's a very interesting perspective. I had not really even thought of it from that angle, that sort of hired gunman perception that can creep in those situations. It's kind of like hiring a preacher for hire who will preach on any religion that you want him to. Okay, it's not really what you want. The one bit of exposure I've had. Bless you.
Oh, coughing.
Oh, coughing. Okay.
Not COVID, asthma.
Gotcha. Well, we're perfectly socially distant here, so by about 4,000, 5,000 miles, I think. So
yeah, it's fine.
But the one bit of exposure I've had to that sort of developer relations world, and it was completely by chance. I didn't have a name to put on it. It just sort of happened. And I'm going to come back, and we're gonna talk more about it, because that's what I want to do as sort of a joint project with you, is with a blockchain company called Dragon Chain. And I had been a fan of them from the very beginning. I'd followed everything, and then when they started making big strides in opening up the technology and the SDKs and things to the community, I got in there, and I was just trying to figure this stuff out, and the documentation was lacking, and some of the code was not well documented in terms of what it actually did, much less how to use it. And so I just started figuring it out, and it was like, okay, I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I'm just going to start blogging about it. And it, of course, caught their eye. And then it turned into, okay, well, why don't we work on this together? Or this is a specific feature that we want to talk about or push. Why don't you build a project around that? And it's kind of that same thing. I was building these things anyway, for my own use, for my own just experimentation, the joy of creating software. Seems like a very strange thing after 15, 20 years doing it professionally. But it just kind of evolved from there, and it was never even really a formal relationship. But even that is much different from just hiring a firm of freelance developer advocates who just come in wherever they're called in and toe the
Yeah.
line, like you said. Very interesting. Very
So
interesting.
I think there's a place for celebrating community members. So Twilio has Twilio
Mm.
champions. Microsoft
Yes.
has MVPs.
Yep.
I think you said Sam said OAuth ambassadors. So you get
Oh yeah. Okay.
people who are lovers of your product in the community, and they become um, champions for you. They'll evangelize and advocate on your side. So part of the role I see in advocacy in DevRel is to nurture these
Mm.
community advocates,
Yeah.
because you've got an advocate team of maybe 10 people, exactly, Sam, kind of like an extended DevRel team.
Yeah.
You've only got so many people. You can only go to so many conferences. And then if you've got people who you look after, you say, hey, I know you're in the community. Here's some swag. Here's some credit. Hey, can we pay your expenses to go to that conference? You start looking after them.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
and they do your advocacy for you. So there's a lot of these programs which really do. Oh, wow. So Samsung ambassadors in 36 countries. And
Wow.
this is it. So these programs spread your word. You look after
Mm-hmm.
your free advocates by,
Yep.
doing various things. And they'll do a lot of the work for you because they believe in you, and you help
Exactly.
support them.
Yep, that is the holy grail in marketing. Is the word of the super spreader of word of mouth, I guess you could say.
Yeah, super spreader. We don't talk about super spreaders at the moment.
But yeah, exactly that. Because who is more believable than the person who just does it anyway, and is just passionate about it?
Yeah.
There is no type of employment situation that could be more authentic than a person who just absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
So where, and this may be just a strictly you question, or maybe for the industry in general, what is the progression? That's, I guess, the typical career path. What do you see for your career ahead as a developer advocate?
So this is an odd one, and it depends on the company. So a lot of DevRel people go in to be PMMs, so project marketing managers,
Okay.
or just product managers. That's like quite a definite path. You can go up to manage DevRel teams. I guess one progression is to jump to other DevRel teams and sort of work your way up.
Sure.
It is an interesting question. There's not like a clear, well, you're a level 1 engineer, now you're a level 7 engineer. There's none of that. Or you're a CTO. Some things like that. It's not clear. You do get advocates and DevRel people going in to be like tech leads because they have a good broad knowledge. So you do see it, but quite often it's going into product marketing and product management is what I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the articles I looked up was sort of talking about and this was, I think, several years ago. I think the conversation has sort of, at least potentially, evolved from there. One of the arguments was that there really shouldn't even be a permanent developer relations role at all, that it should be a rotation of people in and out of actual product development and then to DevRel and sort of cycling around like that. I guess I could see the argument for that, and that would keep things more or less aligned on a more traditional software engineering career path. But at the same time, the developer advocate is supposed to be building these relationships and building a community around it. And if that person is constantly rotating out and you can't build those relationships, it's just a figurehead and seems much less useful to me at that point.
Yeah, I think a big part about DevRel is you build communities, you build that relationship. Like Spabby, who many of you will have seen on Twitch, Gary Hocken on my team, since he joined Twilio, his goal has been to become the go-to face for Twilio in the PHP community. So, if he was cycled out of that, then people would be like, oh, where's Gary gone? Oh, well, sorry, he's not a DevRel again. So I think that's a little bit counterproductive. You want people to get familiar and build a relationship with your advocate so that when they hit that roadblock, they can go, I know that person, they're really friendly, and I can go and ask them to help.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's different for every company, and every community. I mean, I can certainly see there being companies that would utilize these aspects of developer relations without really needing as much the face of idea, the face of our product in PHP, or the face of our product in general, or whatever. But it just seems like this is the human side of development that this role plays or plays into or builds on. And I mean, yeah, we crave relationships, I think, more or less. I'm usually pretty happy to be right by myself in my room, but
aren't we all?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess. But yeah, and again, that comes back to, how do you quantify that? How do you it's very hard to quantify the human side of anything. Numbers are easy. Number go up, number go down, but relationships are very hard to quantify to begin with. So,
definitely.
Anyway, very cool, very cool. I think I'm out of questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? We're cutting it off.
No, I'm okay. I said, I see that Jim says slight issue is that higher profile roles and conferences opportunities are biased towards North America, as this is where the tech giant space. You do see that a lot. It is getting better during COVID times, actually. Mm-hmm. I think, but it is, I know at Twilio that there's been a real pushback against it being San Francisco centric. So they're trying to fix that. The companies know that they can't succeed if they're just location specific. You need to be a global power. You need to have a global workforce. But it is hard. It really, if I was in San Francisco, I'm sure there'd be a lot more opportunities within Twilio for my career growth or to move into product if that's what I wanted. But, being outside of North America, I mean, just being outside of San Francisco is hard, but being outside of North America is that much harder, because like London is, our London office is predominantly a sales office. Mm-hmm. So we don't have any engineering in London, although we did get a front end team that works on our contact center project. So we have got a little bit of engineering there. We've got a big engineering team in Estonia. But then our other European offices, none of them are engineering offices. They're all sales or support. So in Dublin is a big support for all of our like help desk type stuff.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's an interesting conundrum right by itself. I mean, I can say in 15 years of truly professional development, not side jobs and things like that included, but I've been to one conference ever, and it was a PayPal conference, but in garbage. Not that PayPal was garbage. I had no reason to be there. The conference itself was fine, but it's even within the United States, it's just different. I mean, I'm in Mississippi. We don't have a lot of developers here. I guess Austin would be the closest sort of tech center to me in Texas. But yeah, that's one thing I have truly appreciated as a side effect of. That sounds horrible. As a side effect of COVID.
No, it's fine to say. I think it's fine to say that you got to look for positives and everything. Yeah. And I think a real positive that's come out of the global pandemic is this remote workforce, this embracing remote workforces, creating opportunities where previously there weren't any. Yep. So like Twilio couldn't hire in every state in the US. Sure. So, I think it's forced them to be able to hire in different states. They've set that up. I think they couldn't hire in Arizona. I had someone, or New Mexico, someone contacted me and I was like, I'm really sorry, we can't hire there. We can't hire in Canada. So there's these limitations that you have, but there's enough states that we can hire in, and enough countries that we can hire in, that you can start to spread that out. So sure. I think a lot of companies face that.
Definitely. So yeah, I mean, yeah, both from the employment standpoint or the hiring standpoint, and from the advocacy standpoint, I would never have interacted with half of the technologies that I've played with now if it wasn't for the developer advocates and the people who are streaming the technology just because they love it. And most of that, at least my exposure to it, has only come because of this pandemic. So between bringing in the people who just want to use the technology and don't even know it exists, and those incredible new hiring opportunities because of the move to a more remote workforce, which, for God's sake, it should have happened 10 years ago. Maybe not 10 years ago. Technology wasn't quite there 10 years ago.
But it certainly was 5 years ago.
5 years ago, absolutely. I mean, it's been a long time coming, and I think that's going to open a whole new career paths that nobody even thought of yet, because we can do it remote, and we can have this incredible specialist in the middle of Kentucky or Estonia or wherever it is that would never have had that opportunity otherwise. So,
things like you and I connecting, like
exactly.
We met on Twitch, and we sort of became Twitch friends and chat on Discord, and like if it wasn't for the global pandemic, I might not have met you. But previously, I met Sam Julian at a conference, and we bumped into each other going on to the cruise, and we sort of hung out and became friends, and he's been on my stream and things like that. So I miss that in-person thing where I can meet awesome people like Sam, but I've met awesome people like you through being remote and that. So it's balancing, and I think we can learn a lot of things from that.
It is. Some of the best friends of my entire life I've made, and very recently actually, online watching streaming, in and out of the development community, and 2 or 3 business relationships that have already started to form out of those things. It's incredible.
That's amazing. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Well, very cool. I'm hungry. I think you're probably getting hungry. Yep, that's so I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us today.
Well, you can thank me by coming on my stream. So that
I will. Yes, I'm going to do that, and we're gonna build a smart contract on Dragon Chain. I've got to figure out how we're gonna get there, but it's interesting, and I want to see if we can't work Twilio in there somewhere as well.
All right, I need to really know what that is. Hopefully soon.
I'll do my best. That's actually on my list of things to do for Dragon Chain. Actually, is build some of that sort of introductory content for the developer's perspective. So hopefully get that kicked out, and then that'll help, or maybe we can, like you were saying, we can sort of build some of that as we go. Sort of workshop that approach to introducing it, and go from there. But in any case, thank you again so much. Do you have so obviously I can't believe I haven't done this yet. Layla codes it. There you go. So there's a link to your Twitch stream. Do you have anything else you want to plug? Any other social media that you want to drop in? Or?
No, you can find me on Twitter on Layla Codes It as well. And I'm very happy to chat to anyone. You can DM me; they're always open. Just be a good community member and come hang out with us. So that's it.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Jim and Sam Julian and Packy Codes and KJ Miller and who else? Moonsterovska, saw you in there. Thank you all for hanging out and chatting. It's been a blast.
Thank you. We'll do it again. And we got the tech figured out as well, which is awesome.
Yes, so, and my cell phone internet connection did not explode. So, I'm
thanks, chat. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's been great. And thanks for having me, Fitzy. It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks again. And with that, we will call it a day, and I will see the rest of you folks on Friday, probably, maybe. In any case, y'all have a great day, great rest of your week, and we will see you soon. Thanks again.